Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm hoping still everybody's kicking alive. Vamsi already has done a good job for me. You set up the, platform for me. You've already spoken a lot about generative AI. My piece is only going to be sector specific. I'm going to use majority of his technical bits around that. Now, I think before we get on to the role of technology, we've all heard AI, IoT. I think what becomes more critical is to understand what is supply chains management and how has it evolved over the years. Now, of course, if you look at the diagram on your left on the screen, you'll realize that in the erstwhile days, the supply chains were very simple. It was very linear. You had a factory which would produce, then there would be a shipping that would happen to a warehouse, and then it goes to a distribution to a retail, and then it's very simple. Now, of course, with evolving times, the world becoming or the markets becoming global, complexities have kind of become very very high. Today, I believe world appears as a single market. Factories across the world produce different goods. All of them get combined at a different assembly, and then there are a lot of logistics which are happening across. There are waterways, airways, roadways, everything being used, and thereafter we have now with the advent of quick commerce that has become amazingly more and more complex. Now, we all need to appreciate complexities would bring in a lot of challenges, and these challenges, while need to be tackled at a productivity level to ensure that the productivity stays up, there is also a very, very high need to ensure that we do not succumb to vulnerabilities that will appear at each of these nodes. Now, that's where the role of the technologies, which is today we're talking about IoT and the AI. Of course, I again would like to state here the IoT, the way you need to perceive or understand is these are devices that sit out in the field, which collect in data on a real-time basis and have the capability of putting the data across to a server, could be our local prem or a cloud. Which means that these are more like your sensories. If we were to look at our human body, we had 5 senses. IoT devices would act more like sensory. And then on top of it, you have a AI, which is more of a brain. Of course, we're going to touch upon it. But what would these complexities bring when we talk about this evolving way of the supply chain? Now, one is, of course, there is an increased exposure to theft, especially when you talk about warehousing and during transits. I think we've already aware that there has been, again, a lot of technological advancement on this side. There is product tampering and counterfeiting that can happen. Very, very commonly, I think, heard of, read about in pharma industry today. There are surely insider threats. There are behavior issues with a lot of blue-collar manpower being employed in these warehouses where there needs to be a lot of intelligence and surveillance and supervision which needs to be taken care to ensure that the insider threats do get nullified. Data manipulation and cyber intrusions, of course, through exposed industrial system. Now, what does cyber intrusions mean? Now, when we talk about the complexity, when we're talking about global markets, we know for sure a lot of information about the good movements does travel over the net. Now, these informations are both critical in terms of the data that they carry, in terms of the economic impact that they do have. And we all today know that when the data travels over the net, while it is encrypted, it still remains suspect to a lot of cyber attacks. So we cannot really discount that. And then we're now seeing the deepfakes, which is added to a lot of a new dimension to the whole way this needs to be relooked at. We're talking about social engineering. We're talking about spoofing identity. Now, what do all these problems have in common? One, all these happen very silently. They're happening at the background without anybody even noticing it. So a human eye or a human being, for that matter, may not be able to detect these kind of anomalies that are happening, which would eventually lead to a larger challenge. So these do happen silently, and because of the nature and the way these are being assisted by technology, they happen very quickly now. So earlier there was a time that people would come in, they would do a recce. It will take them 30, 40, 50 days to do a recce of a plant or a warehouse before they would break in. So it was easier, as Vamsi said, with a traditional VMS that you could detect it. You could look at the camera detecting somebody coming every day, and then you could do it. But today it doesn't happen that way. Today you have people who can come in with jammers, jam it, and just be there, right? So there are chances that it does get much stronger. There have been multiple examples here. I've picked up India as a base. Of course, this is a global phenomena. India has lost about 90,000 crores last year, only out of supply chain pilferages and lapses in the security. There are certain state examples that I've just put in, which means that this is a pan-India phenomena. It is not specific to a geography or location. And if I was to really expand it with more global examples, then of course this is surely a global phenomena. Now, as I said, if we were to look at AI and IoT, of course, are these sensory devices that we talk about. These are the kind of senses that we have now. These could be eyes in terms of a camera. These could be ears in terms of ultrasonic sensors. These could be any kind of sensors which can pick up data on real-time basis. The data could be digital, the data could be analog, the data could be a visual, a video. And thereafter, the brain, which is the AI, comes into place, which not only processes this data, but it processes data not only against a historical database or a historical baseline. It also today, since it's generative AI that we're talking, it also has the capability of looking at all the other phenomena that are happening. Now, think of it today that, do you believe a supply chain today is kind of immune to any geopolitical change that is happening? Now, if we are talking of a war situation between, let's say, Iran and Israel, do you believe the supply chain for the oils will not get disrupted? It will surely get disrupted. Now, for an organization who's into the business of managing oil or shipping oil, do you not believe that they need to be assisted by technology to ensure that they do not get disrupted when the ship gets sailing? Can cause multi-million, multi-billion dollar losses to a lot of organizations, right? The business continuity comes at risk. Do you not believe weather today plays a very critical role in defining what's going to happen to your supply? And it does, right? Right from what gets stored inside a dark store to what gets, how the weather can impact when the shipment is moving. It does. Now, all these processing, if were done manually through a human being intervention with the best computing also, I believe by the time the decision would be made, the loss would have already happened. So that's the reason the generative AI is helping the human beings. And again, when I make so much of advocacy in favor of IoT and AI, I'm also not saying that the human beings can be discounted. Eventually, the response has to go from human beings. So we must appreciate the human beings are irreplaceable. So that's what they do. Together, they create a feedback-driven, real-time, self-learning security ecosystem. If we were to look at further deeper, how could the IoT assist? How could the sensory that we've been talking, it can help in asset tracking, which means we can have pallets or containers being tagged while they are being moved on an end-to-end basis. We could also surely look at environmental monitoring. We know for sure temperature and RH play a very, very critical role of, especially in food industry when we're trying to store, again, part of supply chain, or for that matter, bulk drugs or pharma. Access control. So one side is the warehousing, the other side is your retail outlets. In between, you have a container which moves on a truck. Now, how do you ensure that it delivers the goods as they were shipped in? So you have a lot of ways that these can be monitored. These could be RFID tags. There are locks available which can be monitored on a real-time basis through GPRS. Video surveillance integration, I think Vamsi has really spoken a lot about it, so I'm not going to touch deeper into it. But what I'm bringing to you is that there are multiple technologies which are used at the field level, and what AI does. So when we talk, and then we're talking of geofencing and route deviation alerts. So while there are, and there could be a larger laundry list that I could put across, but these are some of the major technologies which are being used. And what AI does fundamentally is that it kind of stitches all the information which comes from these, and then gives you an informed decision on which you can act as a human being. And in some cases, it also does automated action by itself. So what IoT fundamentally provides you is continuous visibility and automation in turn. Uh, Again, there have been many, many examples from the industry where these have been used. There are very, very few which are listed here. Most of the logistics companies today, whether it is delivery, we're talking about Snowman Logistics, most of them are using it. I just try to put one name against one technology, but believe me, I know for sure when I was in my early professional years, Reliance Retail had done this long years back in year 2000 when they were setting up Reliance Retail, they had this automation done. Of course, the AI was the missing element that time, but the field applications had already happened. Or for that matter, when IOCL or any oil companies or fleet management companies, when they move their trucks along the route for distribution of their oil, those are all monitored on a telemetry. Their locks are controlled from the central station, which means there is no pilferage that can happen. AI, of course, while, as I said, IoT generates massive data. It's a real-time data. Tons of data comes in humanly. It is not possible for the human beings. AI makes sense out of it. What to do about it, how to read it, and what action to be taken, or what informed decision to be made on which the humans can act. Again, video analytics is what Vamsi spoke about in detail about. Then there is, of course, predictive maintenance that can be brought in, especially when we're talking about the equipment monitoring, which means an equipment monitoring like an HVAC equipment failing, which can bring in a business continuity issue in case of a storage when we have perishable goods being stored there. Those monitoring can happen. Threat detection models, again, is a very, very traditional model. With AI, of course, it has become much more predictive. Facial recognition and biometrics are used, and then of course cybersecurity, because end of the day, the reality is, which Vamsi also touched upon, the cameras or most of these IoT devices today have gone wireless. They do transmit majority of data across the globe on, across the continents to a NOC or a SOC over the wireless networks, and wireless networks are easy to break in. So of course, the cybersecurity integration is extremely high. Again, few examples of what has been implemented in some of the organizations within India. Again, this list is much more elaborate. There's a lot of work which has been done, but there is enough happening. So the message here is that this is not something of tomorrow that we're talking of. This is already happening, need of the hour. And I think what is happening today is that with India trying to take on a pole position on the becoming our net positive exporter, and with our PM and the government announcing multiple schemes, whether it is about Gati Shakti or Bharat Mala and all those projects, I think this becomes much more critical. Some of the challenges, which of course needs to be overcome, and the examples which I stated earlier do point out that these challenges have already been overcome by our internal Indian organizations. Data privacy and compliance remains a critical issue. India also has brought out our act. So GDPR, of course, is a EU regulation. India itself now has in 23 introduced a act called DPDP, which is Digital Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023, which basically qualifies of what kind of information, personal information can be shared and what is the way to manage it. So when you implement these technologies, it does become very critical that we have to have compliances around it. Interoperability has been an issue because there are a lot of existing supply chains which are there. Now, of course, when we talk about brownfield projects, at times interoperability of existing technologies does become a challenge. They may not be easily integrable into a newer technology. Cybersecurity risks do stay, but again, these have been conquered very successfully. And then, of course, there is always a debate of whether this is a cost or this is an investment. I think all the speakers have spoken about these are investments because what they help you overcome is A, they ensure that you do not have a business continuity challenge. B, there are direct impact on the economic values that they do deliver. So, of course, there is a return that comes on these investment. And again, I think today, with passage of time, most of the organizations, economies, governments have accepted that this is no more a cost game, this is more of an investment. Yes, initially, since the cost that gets driven into it is slightly higher, it becomes absolutely important to ensure there is a lot of governance around how these technologies do get utilized at the places where these are installed, so that the right returns can be derived out of it. Otherwise, of course, these could go waste. As I said, these are no more luxuries. These are strategic necessities now. There is enough happening in India itself, whether in terms of Make in India, Bharatmala, Gati Shakti. Indian government is trying to take a pole position as a net exporter, and these technologies only help all the industries who are part of this whole game to deliver better. So as I said, these are not future tech. They are current imperatives. I think that's the whole message.